While everyone fights to survive, our master of ceremonies is making the frozen borders his own kingdom with his mysterious powers in the middle of a frozen and recognizable city in which all infrastructure has been completely closed and all means of transport are paralyzed. Arrives, and an urgent report arrives, according to which the Earth has entered a new ice age with forced marches. The brave correspondent faces the cold with might, all his might, and his microphone fills with every second that passes while he informs the whole world that global temperatures will continue to drop further with no signs of stopping, but urges the public not to lose fists and hope with raised fists and projected confidence that the government has not forgotten its citizens in these times and difficult times, and that as long as they remain united, the inhabitants of this strong nation will overcome this discouraging crisis, just as he was about to unleash more unity propaganda to calm the masses. One last frozen plane crash-landed in the middle of the city, running over the reporter and his entire team. A man looked on. This final shot of the last newscast covered by the country's remaining television network was seen on a miserably frozen screen after the plane crashed into the remaining news team. The television went static, and the coverage of what was happening ended. It took place outside our protagonist's room, and Fawn painted the picture of someone who tried to fight but finally gave up. He didn't even bother to clean up the mess of what little supplies he had left. The area around his entrance is full of boxes of useless things and supplies. Increasingly scarce outside, someone had been hitting quite hard and finally shouting his name and panic. Finally name, hearing the incessant shouting of his name, and Fun got up from his filthy frozen apartment. He grabbed a steel bat modified with some nails with visible traces of blood still visible. And Fun was emaciated and wearing the didn't thickest winter clothing possible, but he didn't. It was enough to combat the cold. He looked slowly and carefully to see who was on the other side of the door. What he saw shocked him. It also excited him with a little. It was a woman he was very familiar with, even before Ice Age began. She was also wearing her thickest winter clothes, but being out exposed to the elements made her face light up and her body shake uncontrollably, and Fung opened the door with a slight blush on her face. The woman's name is Yona and she has no idea what in front of her door. Still with the bat in her hand, he urged her to enter where it was warmer and safer. Nowadays the outside world has become a dangerous, lawless land. Yona opened the door wider to enter the room, relatively more sure of an FS. The next thing she knew was that she was already grabbing him by the neck and pushing her lips on his until her hood fell off from how fast she was moving. Fan was surprised, but she didn't back down, and her cheeks, they got even better in my opinion. This deep passionate kiss lasted way too long, but let's let our boy enjoy the action of that sloppy kiss in the middle of an abandoned hallway outside his house. When they got so far apart, him Fang and he no were breathing hard. Difficulty is tongue is still out, his saliva is still dripping, the world is ending, and this is what they are doing. Totally understandable when they realize what just happened. Han Fan sat back and wondered what had happened to that woman to make him grabbed him and kissed him as soon as he opened the door. Still trying to catch his breath, he confessed that he had realized that Fang was the man he had really loved all this time. Tears were beginning to form in the corner of his expressive eyes as he told him that he was the person you were supposed to be with all the time. It takes a crisis to see someone's true colors, to see who really cares about you, who will be there for you no matter how hard things get. Talking, Jonah wanted to prove that what she said was true by taking in Fungi's hands and putting them against her chest to feel how fast her heart was racing. She'd promised that she would be willing to do anything just to be together. Now hearing the word anything annihilated any hint of Rationality in our boy's brain, all the red flags, they turned green to finally sealing the deal. He only started pressing his thighs against Anfun's asa as he grinned it and pulled him closer. He didn't stand a chance. Maybe the world is covered in ice and supplies are scarce, but he was getting hotter than ever and something was surging in the nether regions. And looked Jonah directly in the eyes as she tenderly caressed his cheeks. He confessed that those words she had just said meant everything to him. However, the door frame is not the right place for them to continue with this. Iona gently shushed him so he wouldn't say another word. All she wants now is for Hanfun to close her eyes and feel the moment against her logical mind. Hanfan did what she asked. Now that she had her eyes closed, he asked what should happen next. Is then when another guy comes in, grabbing the door ominously. This mysterious guy opened wide the frozen door. He stuck himself in Feng's head and hit him with a blunt weapon. With murderous intent. Poor Anfun didn't do it. She saw it coming, crushed his skull with her eyes closed. It was a bloody and brutal disaster, a cruel sneak attack. Blood splattered all over the apartment entrance. Yona and the mysterious man entered the apartment. She shuddered and stammered, apparently surprised that her partner in crime, when she was going to kill Anfun, the man mocked and told her to stop playing her innocent because she knew that was the only path this encounter could take. The world went to hell a long time ago. One less mouth to feed is not going to change anything. Enough of dwelling on the brutal attack. It's time to see what this harmful socket has been hoarding. If they play their cards right, they may even get enough supplies to survive until rescue arrives. The worst thing was that Anfun didn't die. He immediately lay down on the dying, frozen ground, shaking and dying, while all the blood that flowed from his head wound froze as soon as it came out. He wasn't really sure what had happened, but he couldn't move. Maybe he had arrived. Maybe he was finally dying. She can finally know what it feels like to lose her life. The last thing she saw was the mysterious man and that Yona Iceville witch. Yona is flirting a few meters from her inert body. He has been touching her in places she could only dream of while promising to reward her. Her performance as the best actress made the whole operation possible. Anfun, when Anfun's eyes closed forever, the hatred she felt for that cold heart was unbearably heavy. She swore that if there was a next life, she would never allow herself to be a lovesick puppy again. In the empty darkness you were in, Anfun began to see little drops of light. It started as a small speck that began to grow into something larger and Asmar's substantial. As it became even brighter, Anfun began to wonder what the hell was going on. Unconsciously he extended his arm. His skin was translucent as if he were a completely different entity. The warm light cut him off after suffering the endless cold of the real world. That this is the path to heaven, but the golden light suddenly changed its color to red. Now what kind of sky has this crimson color? After being primed by the golden light and trying to reach it, even though at least one abstract construction of his body felt that his limbs were being torn apart as if he were being put through a meat grinder. Nothing goes well for Tasman. The crimson light soon covered his entire body as he uttered a miserable scream of agony. His translucent frame disintegrated piece by piece. The dark nothingness was filled with a scattered essence and Anfun disappeared. He still felt the pain of being ground and built atom by atom. Woke up in a cold sweat, screaming for his life. The pain was too real. He was seduced into closing his eyes, hit in the head for being too horny. He died depressed. He woke up in a void, was tricked into being ripped from an atomic level, and now he doesn't know where he is. He looked around and the sun was shining through his balcony. His soft, comfortable bed was nice and clean. The fresh air. He lifted the curtains and flung. He was far from the cruel world he had become accustomed to. It took 30 minutes to assimilate the crazy things that had happened to him in the last few hours. He spent those 30 minutes delighting in the perfect view of the residential area that dominated his apartment. Anfun couldn't get over the fact that the sun was shining again. He missed its warmth and its light, he thought. He would never again feel that kind of comfort and warmth. Just checked the faith date, and it seems that it is the morning of June 28th, so he could remember the Ice Age apocalypse. Let's start on July 15th. It was supposed to go to die after being ambushed, but somehow he was brought back in time half a month before the end of civilization. In other words, he has been reborn and given the second definitive chance. Apart from the memories he retained from the previous timeline, there is something different this time. Something strange was happening inside his body, and it could have manifested in his hands. Since he woke up, there has been a red glow around his right hand the whole time. He tried to wipe it on his balcony. He started sneezing while wiping his nose after the disaster. He realized that the red glow on his right hand had mysteriously turned into a green one. Then something happened that made him panic. The hand that was enveloped by the green glow began to grow larger, growing in length as if the flesh from his bones and his skin anyone were stretching. Anyone would be scared if they saw his hands doing that. He looked at him helplessly, and rays of light came out of his hand. As modern science could justify or explain a phenomenon mysterious like this, after the lengthening incident outside, it is now shrinking very slowly. The green light appears to be somewhat erratic. It shrinks and grows unpredictably. It looks nothing like the stationary red one, but that is still a mystery. As you sit on your couch, he suddenly feels a pang of unbearable tiredness. He hasn't done much apart from running inside, but he feels exhausted. This could be connected to the green light. Frustrated, he started moving his arms from side to side, trying to get an idea of what it really was. That's when he realized this wasn't the same as those stories. Mana, who likes to read so much, immediately ran to the kitchen and grabbed his sharpest knife. Trickster powers. He wanted to test it by picking up the coolest thing he could imagine and posing with it. After a few minutes waiting for something to happen, for something to change, Anfun just scratched his head in embarrassment while the sharp knife didn't react at all to the light that had in his hand. He was so busy trying to figure out if he had some fantastic trickster powers that he neglected his exhaustion and the roar of his stomach. At this point, he is starving. Unfortunately for him, the Anfun from the past, who has no idea about the apocalypse that is looming, is a lazy bastard who doesn't even have a single piece of edible food in his fridge. This was getting ugly. He's never felt so hungry before. If he doesn't eat something soon, he'll most likely pass out at any moment. He turned his attention to the living room. Standing where a transparent jar of soy snacks stood still, these roasted soybeans were some leftover snacks before the apocalypse. Not exactly a complete and satisfying meal, but it will have to do for now. Should satisfy the hunger before going to the supermarket. Later, he unconsciously grabbed one of the roasted soybeans with his right hand, momentarily forgetting that it had the mysterious green light surrounding it. He was too hungry to think about anything else, so he put the soybeans in his mouth, hoping to ingest some kind of food. As soon as the bean hit his tongue, an explosion of smoke occurred right in his face. The fog that had been created almost covered him. The entire upper part of his body. To his surprise, he was now chewing on a bean. It seemed as if the roasted soybean had sprouted inside his mouth. He could feel the roots on his tongue and the strain itself was extending outwards. He pulled it out and the plant left him an earthy taste in his mouth from all the strange events he's been through lately. This could be close to the top. He was about to eat some roasted soybeans and now this happens, plus he doesn't feel tired anymore. It seems like that explosion on his face erased the feeling of hunger he felt. Looking down at his right hand, the green light has faded. Maybe all this has something to do with what happened to the soybeans. He took one of the pods from the reserve and examined it carefully. As he opened the delicious green pod, confirmed that it was an ordinary fresh bean sprout. Perhaps this is the power he was daydreaming about. If whatever it may be, it is undoubtedly an incredible discovery that should be studied further. However, he Cannot investigate anything with worrying about starving at any moment. Right now he has bigger fish to fry in the way of stocking up on supplies before the end of the world. As everyone knows, for the first time in a long time, Enfun was able to get out of his apartment to feel the sun on his skin and hear the birds singing. He could walk among the bustling crowds of people in the shopping district going about their business instead of locking themselves in their houses fearing the cold. And Feng was deep in thought as he walked towards his destiny. Let's clear this up first. The red glow around his hand has turned green. The green light shrinks and grows his limbs, making his heart beat faster and suppressed. When he touched the soy snacks, it sprouted in a whole stalk. Look at his hand, right, with more questions than answers. Wonders what kind of power has been granted to him by who knows who. Continued his contemplative walks carefreely until he heard a sweet familiar voice calling him by name. And that before would have melted him but now made his blood boil, and Feng did not realize right away, and he came back to see who was calling his name. It was that evil witch who had him brutally killed. Yona showed a wide smile. Her makeup was about to hide her rotten personality. She asked if Feng was shopping too. She even used her expert tricks to look as pretty as possible while commenting that it was fate that they found themselves in this place. Anand still hasn't been able to digest everything that happened, but seeing Yona in the wild is starting to bring back the bitterness that he clung to until his death. Last breath. Yona was the goddess of her dreams for 3 long years. He was a simpleton who did everything in his power to make her happy. He did all that, knowing very well that he was just another boy from the friend zone. He wasn't even in the friend zone, was just a piggy bank for all those years, dedicating himself to the wrong girl. He would never have thought that she would be the one to end his life before it could get out of control. And fun, they pinched themselves, keeping their feet on the ground, and Kama took all their strength of willingness to do it by thinking rationally. Now is not the time to take your revenge, at least not yet. First you have to solve the supply problem unless you want to go back to hunger and misery. In the Ice Age, Iona walked over and waved her hand around his eyes as he asked her what he was facing. This had never happened before. Just by hearing her voice the poor guy fainted. Han Fan swallowed the hatred he felt for the witch and faked a smile as he apologized for being speechless and for how especially pretty she was today. She was so radiant that she got a little lost in the moment. That's better. Yona laughed shyly and asked him when he had become so soft with his phrases. Her lips sketched a light and confident smile, thinking that she had this boy eating the palm of your hand. Sashi went for the fatal heart shot with the most adorable pose in her arsenal. Iona invited Infanga to go shopping together, but they had met anyway. Now there is a limit to how long an Fon could face her without losing his temper, control of his anger, so he just kept walking and apologized that he wouldn't do any shopping together today. Jonah's owner was shocked. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He was supposed to get something for free from a pathetic nice guy. While he was walking in the other direction, Anfun couldn't help but praise the girl's technique. But he won't fall into the trap. He won't be used as a personal cashier again. He's not so stupid anymore. So he went straight to the place where he could get everything he needed, the Walmart shopping center. This Walmart in his city is the largest and best-stocked supermarket in the eastern region. It is like Walmart but with copyrighted brands. Of course, when the Ice Age comes, this place will be clean overnight. In the previous timeline, nobody ever found out who did it and how Anfun has already started shopping and has filled the cart with goods. He needs to stock up as much as possible before society collapses due to the cold. He consulted some internet forums for a generic survival guide for the apocalypse. He found it surprisingly useful. Scrolling through it, he listed the things he would need, like food, winter clothing, medicines, daily necessities, fuel, tools, transportation, and even weapons. There is a lot to prepare, but he was so excited about getting supplies that he forgot about the more important problem at hand, the balance. His current personal wallet was a meager 15,000, equivalent to just over $2. How was he going to ensure a safe and comfortable life in the freezing apocalypse with just this amount? He was going to need a lot more cash for everything he was going to do. Needing a message notification at that moment, a notification appeared on his phone that could be heaven's way of telling him to calm down. The message came from an organization called Money Jorlan, congratulating him for being approved to request a loan of up to $168,000, a little more than 23,000 US dollars. A light bulb went on. There was no reason to be afraid to get scared when it came to funds. How could he forget that the convenience of technology had provided him with an infinite amount of money? Dozens of money lending apps that require minimum loan requirements for those desperate for cash to be approved are incredibly predatory, but burying yourself in debt doesn't matter since you won't have to pay it back when the apocalypse is in full swing in the district. Commercial. A lady was angrily kicking an empty soda can on the sidewalk. Obviously she was angry about something. It turned out to be Jonah. It seems like she's not in a very good mood. Her eyes were full of toxic vitriol. How today one of her many dared to refuse to take her shopping when she got ready, so that the pamper was seriously pissed that Anfun would run off like that without letting her drain her bank account like a useless leech. She started insulting the guy in her mind for being a pathetic loser who doesn't even have a car. Yona swore no be nice again with that. His angry walk was interrupted by loud honks coming from a car approaching down the road. Curious, he turned around to see what was happening. It looked like a new truck just left the dealership. It was still shiny and top quality. And Feng, she was rolling down the windows in the driver's seat, just stopped to say hello to Jonah, who just passed her while taking a walk of shame through the shopping district seeing the new wheels. Iona swore never to be ambled to and again. Fun. All he saw were new leather seats and the smell of cash, and Fun went down when they asked him if the car was his. He responded affirmatively and added that he had just received it. He approached the witch and made up a story about how her father has been killing it in business in the United States, so he has money to blow. He even added that he had just left the airport after dropping off his old man. Jonas's face lit up. The only thing that could make that happen would be the chance to get rich, so he took a deep breath and put on his game face for Enfang. This is the second time he has done this. Today he looked at the ground and started to shake slightly, knowing that Fun was taking his wealthy father to the airport. Today he started to apologize for having asked him to go shopping without knowing that he would have a very tight schedule. Then tears came to his eyes. He started to shed tears at the perfect moment while telling Anfun that he had been so cold to her. She thought he was abandoning a good friend. Anfun. He smiled with satisfaction. This performance, worthy of an academy, would have done wonders with the previous one, but now things are different. He could see through everything. This silly girl was a professional. He did not hesitate to grab her by the waist, pulling her closer with his other hand. He grabbed her chin, and they looked into each other's eyes. Jonah was surprised that one of his friends seemed so sure of himself. He gave her a master class in acting and promised that he would never abandon her since she was too important to him to do anything so cruel. For a fraction of a second there was an imperceptible crooked smile on her face, but she quickly erased it, continuing with her acting as a sweet and sincere girl. She brought out the heavy artillery. Yona admitted that Enfeng is very special in her life and even invited him to eat now watch a movie today to get to know him better. Just when I was about to ask him for an answer, the cell phone had already vanished like the wind. It was the perfect and imperceptible escape, and he was left speechless. His sincere confession was only directed at the air. Anfun was already there fiddling with the piles of boxes in the back of her truck. She playfully complained about how she still has to carry so much stuff and how tight her schedule is. Clearly enraged that her attack missed its target, Iona did her best to keep sweet girl composure as she asked him why he had bought so many things. He replied that it was nothing special, he just grabbed some things he likes to torment the witch. Even more, Han Feng blatantly lied and excitedly told her that their washkit, a gift for the lady. Without wanting to exaggerate, Iona waved goodbye as she walked towards her house. She smiled and said she was looking forward to receiving that gift as soon as she turned her back to an FSU. Suppose that greater simp. A sly smile appeared on his lips, proud of how he took care of his piggy bank. On the other hand, Infun was just having fun playing with the witch. Meeting this woman, he knew he couldn't let her Find out about his small stash of supplies. All this will be his ticket to survive the apocalypse. After all, Yona alone will have to wait her turn once the world ends, and Feng will make sure she gets what she deserves. The mysterious guy who hit him over the head, to his anxiety over the inevitable collapse of society that's coming, is beginning to dissipate. Han Feng begins to wait impatiently for what is coming. The next day arrived on June 29th. Again on July 15th it will be daytime. It will be the beginning of the end. First the heavy snowfall will arrive, and then the temperature will drop drastically to 20°C at an alarming rate. Throughout the following month, temperatures will continue to brutally drop day after day until reaching minimums of up to -70°C. At that time the world would be completely covered in ice and snow, making it almost impossible to go outside. The first thing that Infund assured was his abundant food supplies. In addition to the volume of stock, he needs everything to be well packed, and he cannot let the neighbors realize that something is happening. They cannot suspect that he is hoarding large quantities of food. It was a job. Exhausting. Some of the delicate supplies had to be moved at night when no one was around. He trusted no one enough to help him, so he had to do it alone. When the apocalyptic ice age begins, the power grid will be extremely unstable. That's where his shine shines. His last acquisition was a generator of great power and enough fuel to keep it running for at least a year with guaranteed power. Now you have to consider the fatality. As a result of the building's heating systems breaking down, he had to call in some specialized contractors to modify his house to have independent heating. Anfun also ordered reinforced doors and windows. He needed a room to store all the supplies he had accumulated, so he used an empty bedroom to store all the essentials. By the time he finished preparing everything that was in his little survival notebook, it was already July 14th. Just one more day before the temperature plummets and everything becomes chaos. Next on his list is the main event you've been putting off due to uncertainty all this time. It's time to get down to business and really study your mysterious ability. Anfun prepared a home-cooked meal for dinner as he pondered his survival in the Ice Age apocalypse ahead. When things get difficult, the supplies he has accumulated will not be enough, but he has a possible answer to this problem. His power to manipulate plants in some way. Mystique could be his only hope for a sustainable future. The food he cooked had beans. Soy is the main ingredient. This is the same aliavi that he conjured from a single toasted sandwich using his ability, and he tried many gestures and possible triggers, but the lights had not yet gone out. The activation is so random that finding the right trigger it's almost impossible. For now it's time for a risky taste test. You need to make sure that the food conjured by your abilities is edible. Who knew that trying a aliavi would be so maddening? Anfun ate half the plate of aliavi, no apparent problems. Even the soy milk passed the taste and safety test. While he chewed his lunch, the confirmation that his ability could provide edible food changed the game. At least this proved that he theoretically had the ability to spawn food. The next step is the most difficult and the one that it's more based on trial and error. You have to figure out how to actually use the red and green lights and making them appear according to his will. At the moment, he has only tried it on soybeans. But what if he could use it on other things by opening his newly stocked refrigerator? Anfun gathered up the courage to experiment and see if his ability would also work with other plants. The trial period lasted from noon until the sun was about to set. Anfun did not know it since he fainted in the middle of the experiment. When he slowly opened his eyes, he realized that he was holding something tightly in his right hand. A kind of green vegetable, a huge broccoli. Slowly getting up from the floor, he couldn't be bothered by the absolute mess that was in his kitchen. Since the pain in his head was infernal, it felt like something was hitting from the inside of his skull. He has to take note of this sensation in the future. This power of Su takes a serious toll on the mind and body and cannot be used without restrictions. Unless you want to pass out and wake up with a migraine every day. After waking up, you immediately took a spoonful of your aliavi to refuel again. You may have gotten sick today on the limit, but at least he has learned something vital about this mysterious ability of his. A few hours ago, before fainting, he arranged a varied selection of products neatly on the kitchen floor. He tried to use his power on a handful of them after managing to activate the green light a few times. Tubers like potatoes didn't react at all to his green light for some unknown reason, but not all of them were useless. Some of the crops grew from seeds into full plants, like soybean stalks. Wheat was one of them, and some didn't. They did not stay the same, nor did they grow until they became full-fledged crops. They exploded in his hands like mini-bombs. It was a terrifying experience that caught Anfun off guard. After those explosions, the plants turned into a substance similar to charcoal but very light. This development was certainly out of the question. Of his expectations, fortunately, he was able to find some decent use for these inedible black substances. They are used to heat space like charcoal when they are gathered in a container and ignited. Coming from a future where heat was a luxury and Feng would gladly accept these heat balls, he would no longer have to worry about staying warm in the future. After a lot of explosions, he tried many more times and failed in most of them. He continued throwing those black balls into the bucket one by one. When he got into some seeds that he had bought, he chose to adopt a more meditative posture while forcing himself to concentrate on controlling his breathing. After a few minutes of intense concentration that made him sweat profusely, he finally managed to the most significant success of this experiment. A gigantic broccoli appeared surprisingly within his reach before his eyes turned and his consciousness faded. He commented that the success rate of this method was still too random, so his body hit the ground. Luckily, he was already there, sitting on the tiles, so the fall wasn't that bad. Now he's awake and his belly is full of beans. He played with the broccoli while thinking long and hard, and he guides himself without finding any pattern to this skill, but he can't give up. There must be some kind of principle behind how this ability works. Still, there are too many unknowns, but today you have made some decent progress. At least now you have some understanding of the activation conditions of the lights. Who would have thought that the key to activating this strange ability lies in his own consciousness? All he has to do is enter a meditative trance. His method is to imagine himself in nature, naked, free from the bonds of human civilization. In other words, buck naked in his mental palace, walks on the ground with the bare feet. Your soul is in direct contact with the earth where life grows. The sunlight kisses your skin while all life around you harmonizes, just like Adam in the Garden of Eden. Your body and your mind are part of the natural world, a peaceful resonance of all that is alive. Once you enter that state of mind, slowly open your eyes and a familiar green glow appears again. This ability of yours is directly connected to your consciousness. Working from that concept, he could freely invoke the green light. Now that he has finished with all the plant samples with a low success rate, it is time to move on to another type of specimen. This time the goal of the second experiment would be all types of meats like this. He slowly brought his right hand around with the green light towards a juicy piece of meat. He was already expecting it, but it's still disappointing that there hasn't been any reaction. Maybe the green light only works on plants. Thinking that the soft focus might not be effective, and Feng grabbed his flesh and squeezed hard while praying for his right hand to work its magic. After a few minutes, he had to accept that nothing would happen. You could see the defeat and despondency in his tired eyes. It was then when he thought of the sensation he felt while meditating in a trance. He could perceive two different colors, the red and green lights, throughout the experiments. He has not yet tried to use the red one by grabbing the primary activation function of his ability. He just has to concentrate on bringing out that red light from his consciousness while still holding the meat. He closed his eyes and tried to reach the other ability that lay dormant within his system. After a while, a spark of red light finally appeared in his right hand. With that initial spark, the glow quickly enveloped his hand, which was surprisingly also wrapped around the piece of meat, to say that it was creating some kind of bubbling reaction on the surface of the meat. After a few seconds of intense concentration, and Feng opened his eyes to a putrid pile of dark red, hardened sludge that looked like it had come out straight from hell. He immediately threw that billow thing to the ground in pure disgust. No doubt you place would to be in his place. realizing that this disfigured sludge could provide some valuable insights. A fang crouched on the ground to watch it. He poked the thing, and it was a little this soft. This is how meats react to red light. It may seem disgusting, but the texture and general feel point to the possibility that the meat has been cooked or something. This was really all that red light can do. Heating things up, stoves and pans could do the same and could produce more appetizing meals than whatever the hell this is. Deeper. If you were to describe the sensation of red light as a processed disintegration process, your next experiment with meat seemed much better than the first, but if that is the case, understanding the underlying concepts of these two lights might be easier than you thought. Initially, he took a handful of soybeans from his pile and grabbed them tightly with his right hand. In his left hand, he had the red light and the cooked meat. If the green light represents the evolution of matter, the red one is the opposite of disintegration, since he's already trying out some confusing concepts. What would happen if he combined the green light for grabbing beans and the red light for grabbing meat? The result was an even bigger reaction than he expected. The combination produced a bright, cutting light between his hands when the lights went out. He saw that his flesh had grown a lot. The flesh had been supersized. But where did the soybeans in his right hand go? It could be that the two subjects merged into this gigantic slab. It's undeniably incredible. It looks, feels, and smells exactly like meat, real meat, but even fresher. Somehow gaining confidence that he's getting a lot better at superpowers, he decided to do more experiments. After a few hours, the floor was back to how it was at the beginning. His kitchen was full of charred remains of meat and crops. Frustrated, he threw a tantrum and everything he tried failed miserably, getting all that exasperation out of his system. And Feng sat down and took a deep breath. For now he will stop the experiments. He can always take his time to find out its deeper complexities later. Anyway, today has been a productive day, even if it ended on a bitter and charred note. Anfun can no see the future if he manages to master this mysterious power. There is no doubt with infinite resources he would be the man at the top of this post-apocalyptic world as his dream, so he could add some sweet muscles to his image. Talking about power, I may have forgotten one of the most important aspects of survival. Food alone is not going to help you in the next few days. You will be completely vulnerable with all this loot if you do not have a decent weapon to defend yourself. Quickly grab the various crops scattered on your ground. You have to hurry up and find yourself a weapon before the temperature plummets. Looking out the window, it seems that the initial phases of the apocalypse have already begun. The snow begins to fall from the sky. It's here. The public might think that this is a typical snowy afternoon, but that is not the case. Same as previous timeline, it's really happening. The collapse of modern civilization is starting. Going outside, Anfun fears temperatures will drop to 45 below in a week. He needs a gun and fast, but buying a gun in this country is illegal, and he doesn't exactly have connections with the criminal world. That's when he heard a scandalous man shout and boast about being a builder with millions at stake in each project. The guy boasted to a passerby that he knew the infamous Lao Juan from the Yes Gang leadership group. Close, they are so close. They are Anfun practically brothers. Anfun thinks he has seen this bully before, an idiot with an exaggerated fashion style adorned with jewelry of dubious authenticity and clothes, exaggerated street clothes, a guy who offers cigarettes to everyone for some reason around this area. He refers to this cigarette-loving bully from Colorado as the homeless. Homeless Joe's real name is Lizzie. He likes to be called brother. He lives in the Hot Springs neighborhood. He has a reputation for being in charge of projects, recruitment, and knows everyone's cigarettes in the area. If you offer him cigarettes, he will not smoke except other brands, since he only smokes, and other brands make him cough. He is always helping his older brother with his projects and is looking forward to going to school. In reality, he is lazy. It doesn't have a good job. But he always acts busy. He is often seen walking around while taking a call, shouting about 20 or 10 million worth of business as if he wants everyone to hear how successful the guy is. He is Hanan phone lazy. Carol Hanan FON can see that maybe the homeless man has the necessary connections to get what he needs. So he approached the Hispali, referring to him as his brother and saying that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Anfun greeted him with an awkward smile because he didn't know how that guy would respond. The brother asked him angrily if they knew each other as he being approached. Being younger than Lee, he introduced himself as Zioan, something like saying "Hey little brother." He swore that they had met a long time ago, so he must have forgotten. The third complaint is that lately he has been full of work like that. You can't blame him for his bad memory, but he was quite receptive to talking. And Feng was being overly cautious as he was about to order something very illegal. He surveyed the right area, looking from left to right, to make sure no one could hear what he was saying. Was about to say, then he approached Le Brother Ali and directly asked him for the gun he needed to defend himself. The next few days, Lee got scared and asked why he would need a gun. Sign that is not a good sign, feeling however, like a guilty criminal. However, Feng Feng had to move on since he couldn't think of anyone else who could help him with his problem. He began to talk seriously, wanting to clarify something. Before they went any further, he insisted that his organization was not engaged in any illegal activity and that weapons were a serious matter. He hinted that he had contacts for it but that he wasn't one to mix ordinary people with something dangerous. And Feng pushed the bully's questionable Lis-Witten bag out of his face and insisted that everything had gone wrong with his brother on his own. He was asking about some firearms for personal defense since he has been involved in some unpleasant personal dispute, and then Feng began to lie like a scoundrel with a story that he was making up as he spoke. According to him, one day when he was going to work on a bicycle as usual, he ran into an old man who did nothing but spit everywhere on the bike path. It was so disgusting, and to top it all off, the wind blew one of those disgusting globs of saliva up to Feng's face when he was going about his business. Enraged by the disgusting old man, Fun threw his bike aside and confronted the old man. "What did the bastard you ask?" The idiot decided to spit on him again while he was thinking up his complaint. He couldn't take it anymore and applied some justice. The disgusting old man was given a good beating in the middle of the street with all the spectators on the sidelines, while the old man left with his clothes in tatters and his face in a mess. The bastard swore that he would take revenge on the house for this humiliation. One day, that old man was cured and was waiting Feng on the bicycle route. This time, he was accompanied by some thugs. They gave Feng a good beating and threatened to do it again. If they ever saw him somewhere, his clothes were in a mess. His face was bruised, and his body was wounded. He had never felt so humiliated in his life. That's why he wants a weapon to defend himself. That's the short and long version. That's the story that occurred to him on the spot, and it seems that it was very effective. The brother told him. He fumed and raged at the thought of the disgusting old jerk spitting on the road and hitting Fun. Such uncivilized behavior shouldn't be tolerated. That's not really the point of the persecution story. But at least he's getting somewhere, the brother told him. He tapped him on the shoulder and assured him that he would take care of this revenge. He assured Anfun that he has our boy covered. He just has to make a call to his older brother right now and they will go get the gun. Anfun was starting to doubt whether he had made the right decision by approaching this guy with all that hard face. The brother invited him to go to the headquarters and get on the bus with him. His excuse was that his Panamera was being serviced in the workshop, so he couldn't drive. Even the Anfun headquarters assured him that transportation would not be a problem after all, he has his car. Parked right next to it, the brand new vehicle immediately caught the attention of this IP's best homeless man on the way to his older brother. He kept talking about Enfang's good life and asked him how much his new car cost. It was 170,000 of borrowed money, while he nonchalantly told him to turn left at the next intersection to get to the supposed office. The brother kept taking photos of himself sitting in the new leather seats. His name on social media was Handsome Spiga, and tonight's post was a photo of his idiot face with a caption complaining that the seat of his SUV is still too hard to sit on because it's new. They stopped in one of the city's car zones. Some tough-looking guys were camping outside complaining about the bad weather. You can't blame them. Overnight it had gone from summer to the harshest winter. When they saw some crunchy-looking wheels stop, everyone turned to whoever was about to get out of that car. When they saw that it was Lizzie, they approached him to ask him what was going on. Brother Lee simply told them that he had some matters to discuss with Boss Lou. The other thugs assumed that the new SUV or Tiger belonged to him and began to bother him about the price. Lee did not deny it at all. Absolutely, even proudly bragged about having spent $70,000 on the car. Anfun wasn't upset. However, bragging that you own the car so confidently while the actual owner is standing nearby is kind of a cheeky Guadet move. As soon as they entered the car establishment, the one known as Boss Lou, a tough gangster-looking man, came out upset that Loudmouth was bothering him so late at night. The brother became visibly much more reserved in front of the boss. He even kindly offered him his cigarettes. However, the big guy has no time for filler nonsense. He is a busy man. The brother introduced his little brother to Anfun as a buyer of something special. A gun. Boss Lou wanted to confirm if he had heard correctly. As soon as the big boss looked at him, Anfun was paralyzed with fear. He wasn't sure what would happen if he made a bad move or said the wrong thing. Boss Lou looked at him in silence with his cigarette in his mouth and seemed to scrutinize him from head to toe as the big man smiled. Quite disappointed that Fun only needed a lousy gun when he was expecting something more interesting, he made a gesture towards one of his chance henchmen, and the henchman already knew what he had to do. Rummaging through his jacket, he put a gun on the table, and the boss luck. He offered a price of 6, but for the easy-to-conceal and reliable weapon, and Fong humbly rejected it since he was thinking rather of something a little longer and larger. He was not looking for a low-caliber pistol but rather something that required a telescopic sight to shoot. Boss Lou's expression turned serious as he stared at Anfun. Our guy could have crossed the line without knowing it. He immediately fell down as if he had just swallowed his tongue. The big guy started yelling how unrealistic it is to demand a damn sniper rifle like he's carrying nothing. A discreet business here. This is not a damn mall where you can choose what kind of illegal product they give you. Boss Lou's final offer is the gun on the table. Take it or leave it. Brother Lee had to intervene to try to calm the boss. His idea to convince the boss to listen to him was to invent a backstory for Anfun, a made-up story that supposedly happened 5 years ago and in which the non-existent wife of Hong Kong was involved. Lee is a rather mouthy but talented narrator. Under the relentless fall of the snow, the boss listened to his lies until the end. The story must have been phenomenal because the Boss Lou was so furious that he almost broke the table in half. He kept repeating the disgusting things that were the ones who had wronged Anfun. Apparently Anfun had 3 children with a non-existent wife, but it turned out that none of them were his. Anfun, he just stood there and went with all the lies. Even for someone nicknamed Tramp or me, this ridiculous story was too exaggerated, but it worked. The boss Leo gave his personal guarantee that Anfun he would receive his sniper rifle as soon as possible. He promised that he would do it personally, but it might take a few days. Once again, Si-chun will take care of everything. The boss wanted him something semi-automatic with a lot of ammunition so that Anfun would have what he needed. Brother definitely came in the clutch. The big guy also gave Anfun the gun. he wanted to give it to him for free. A gift from one man to another, and Fun was speechless. The made-up story was so good that the boss had formed some kind of one-sided bond with him. Now that it was already solved, the big guy went back to his phone to take care of his other more urgent matters before leaving. And Fun wanted to return the favor a little, stating that a friend of his who works for the government had told him that due to the abnormality of the situation, limits would be applied to the purchase of supplies like this. So it is better to stock up before that happens. Seeing the young man's serious look, as if he really knew what the boss was talking about, he also couldn't help but take the advice seriously. He nodded in agreement, understanding, and commented that he understood, and so the brother Eli and the house left the center of the underworld of the city with a firearm secured on the way back. Eli did not stop bragging about how he ran the business like a boss and told him it was great now that their older brother the big boss is in a good mood. They could even ask that guy for a cannon, and he would say yes. Fan wanted to thank the bully by buying him some cigarettes. The brother tried to be humble and insisted that he did what he did only to help him, but that he would gladly take 7 or 8 cartons of his beloved, who was number 6. He even promised to take a fungus to Sanaa once he was paid for his so-called project. Our boy was already thinking about his next move. Logically, the supplies are secured and weapons obtained. He should be prepared for the first days of the apocalypse. At the very least, he can focus on studying his abilities. Completely solving the food problem would make his long-term survival chances skyrocket. He was so engrossed in his own world while he was walking that he didn't realize there was an icy patch on the ground and he slipped. Feng was so worried about surviving that he didn't follow one of the golden rules of the next ice age not to get hurt. He fell pretty badly. His leg must have been seriously injured. This is bad because of the acute pain he was feeling and clumsy landing. There was a very real possibility that he had broken leg. Shakily took out his car keys, handed them to his brother Eli, and asked to be taken to the nearest hospital as soon as possible. Lee scratched the back of his head and admitted that he doesn't actually have a driver's license, insisting that he can't drive without him, but it's safe to say that this bomb he just can't drive, period. At least he didn't leave Feng on the ground to ride with the pain of a broken leg. He offered his shoulders to lift Feng, but he had a hard time doing it. Both of them wouldn't make it alive to the hospital at this rate, so Anfun just called a taxi, which he had to pay for him like a bankrupt bastard. Even the hospital, an essential establishment, was beginning to freeze under the intensifying blizzard. In the infirmary, someone named Hyan was left in charge of the night shift on this night. Blanca. The snow was getting heavier and the roads were beginning to be buried very deep. The head nurse, Jian, had just started his night shift, but the calls coming from the hallway were already flooding the emergency section, which was very short of staff. The pretty nurse had no choice but to intervene by taking his medication before he went home. This accident couldn't have happened at a worse time. It just had to happen before the apocalypse came into full swing. As he looked at the results of his x-rays, he regretted having been so careless. Brotherly. He accompanied him for most of the process, but the guy had to leave because apparently he had to take care of some business. However, he's the real deal, and he even left his number for Xian Fun. He needed something else now that he was alone in the hospital lobby. Watching the chaos around him was stressful. The hospital was quickly overflowing with patients. Victims of accidents caused by the sudden blizzard and the rapid drop in temperatures. Emergency beds were filling up. They lined the hallways with grim testimony to the worsening conditions outside, as he personally just wanted to get his medicine and get out of this place as quickly as possible before the roads closed forever. Luckily, his leisure time didn't. It would be boring since a goddess had just passed right in front of him. The head nurse, Jian, had come to reinforce the short staffing of the emergency room. On the first bed he checked, there was a patient with serious injuries. The next in his rotation was bed C, where they had just cleaned a patient's wounds. Fortunately, the vital signs were stable. Bed 5 needed another dose of glucose in 10 minutes. Informed the head nurse that if the patient's heart rate dropped below 80, epinephrine had to be administered immediately. Along from the head nurse's rounds, Anfun couldn't take my eyes off her. She was simply amazing. Being a head nurse at such a young age, she must be a generational talent. Plus, he saw how she treated all types of patients. She was kind and incredibly skilled. She looked like a being radiant in the middle of a hopeless place. She was also incredibly pretty. She worked the busy night shift, but her smile didn't waver. She was basically an angel. She was so in love that her eyes accidentally traveled to some ungentlemanly Arias fan. Immediately looked away out of respect, but head nurse Jian was too unaware of his surroundings. A real airhead. Suddenly the old man sitting next to him started to catch the attention of the pretty head nurse. She didn't actually have to take care of patients outside of her rounds, but still the head nurse Jian answered the call with a smile. She politely apologized to the old man and asked him if he could come back a little later to help him, since he still had to attend to some emergency patients to cover the lack of staff. The old man complained that his back hurt a lot. He explained that his back pain had gotten worse lately, and he wanted the head nurse to take a look to see what the cause was. Actually, that bastard was nothing more than a dirty pervert who was trying to film up her skirt without realizing what was really happening. He just smiled and apologized once again, saying that in case of problems again, maybe it would be necessary to schedule an X-ray. To be sure, the old pervert began to get insistent, urging them quickly while pointing out where the bastard hurt. He even got up from his seat to inappropriately touch the angelic nurse, being the airhead that he used to be. She laughed as she was ticklish by nature for back problems. It is really advisable to wait for the resident doctor's examination. The PR started pushing her, his hand crawling even further down her waist. This disgusting act would have continued longer. If something or someone didn't do it, he would have stopped a force against the old pervert, causing him real back pain and ripping the phone out of his hands. The kind healthcare worker, Hyan, wanted to check if the old man was okay. Fortunately, Feng came to his rescue, humbly apologizing for his crutch flying towards him. One side, since it was the first time he used one. He bent down and went straight for Pervs's old phone while shamelessly wondering if it was broken or not. Just when he was about to touch it, the perfectionist started sweating nervously and yelling at him to stay away. Put on the phone. He didn't listen. He walked to the side of the room. He made a mess with the blindfold, and he didn't let this damn sermon get away with doing something so disgusting. As soon as he opened the phone, his suspicions were confirmed. He looked at the Kanea directly in the eyes. If looks could kill, the old man would have already died. The proof was already there on the home screen. This person had the nerve to film a nurse who worked hard and even assault her. There is no good reason why Fun shouldn't call security and have them escort the bastard to a jail cell where criminals love to put perverts in their place. Fan would keep the phone, and the next time he saw this disgusting old man again, he threatened to ruin his miserable and disgusting life. The old bastard knew that he had no choice but to run away and never go near this place again, and that made him angry at the first opportunity he had. He got up from the hospital floor and ran out the door as if his life depended on it. Meanwhile, the head nurse did not understand how someone who was complaining of severe back pain could run so fast. Fun was stunned when he saw it firsthand. The most comically naive person he had ever met decided to show him what the old fart was doing with the phone filming under her skirt. Judging by his reaction, he didn't notice anything strange about Han. He gave him the phone with the recording so he could decide whether to delete it. Calling the police to report the owner also reminded him to be more careful so that people like that pervert don't take advantage of his kindness. He smiled with the brilliance of 1,000 stars and then asked if Anfun had an injured leg. The adrenaline of catching that old pervert in the act must have numbed the pain of his broken leg. But now that he had recovered, the pain returned, and he screamed in agony. Luckily, Nurse Hein was an expert in this type of injury and quickly put the cast in place. He looked at him and asked if it still hurt. Anfun thanked him for taking care of his broken leg, and now it doesn't hurt at all. At that moment, it was like there were only the two of them in the crowded room. Hien returned the gratitude while promising not to do it again. Allow such bad guys to mess with her from now on. I would give them a good punch in fun. I just wanted her to be more aware of her surroundings, seeing how she let her broken leg, her feet touch her front pillows. It seemed like she hadn't learned anything. She was still as clueless and unaware as ever. While Fun had his head in the clouds, another nurse called Hyam because they needed his help in the emergency beds before returning to his runs. The angelic head nurse reminded him not to forget to come back in a week to have his leg checked again. In fun, he promised he would, but making plans for a week from now was unrealistic. He just smiled helplessly because only he knew what was really going on in the world. He took the crutch which he crushed against the old pervert and limped out of the hospital. Anfun simply accepted the fact that I would never be able to see her again. The next day the blizzard had not stopped but had intensified even more and had frozen all the infrastructure and services. So going outside was a dangerous challenge. On the morning news, emergency weather reports continued to report that in the next 24 hours, all regions of the country would experience heavy snowfall and a sharp drop in temperatures. Strange reports from foreign correspondents showed that temperatures were plummeting in all corners of the world. Dubai, Egypt, the Amazon basin, and other places that should not be experiencing this type of phenomenon are seeing their land masses buried in thick blankets of snow. The nation's experts, along with specialists from 46 other countries, were rushing to the United Nations to discuss the cause of the abnormal weather. All the networks echoed the fact that the experts said that this strong cold wave would not last too long. They always ended their news programs with a public service announcement so that people would pay attention to the disaster warnings and follow the provisions taken by the local government. They continued to remind citizens to remain calm, avoid spreading or believing unfounded rumors, refrain from hoarding provisions, and make panic purchases since the catastrophe would soon pass. Warm, cozy, and drinking wine inside his decorated house, Anfun clicked his tongue. The government and the media continued to lie left and right, feeding the public with lies to maintain order. If he hadn't died and come back to life, he might even believe them. But this time it was different. He was well prepared for everything that was to come. The provisions were well stocked. The house was reinforced, and the heating system worked perfectly. He had also prepared well. He didn't. There was nothing to worry about in the immediate future. His phone began to buzz incessantly with messages from the group chat of the residents of the Happy Residential Complex, in which they talked about the strange weather and how the snow was already making the roads unusable. Everyone couldn't. The member nicknamed Mysterious Person claimed everyone's attention to inform them that the blizzard was not caused by normal weather patterns but was caused by something within the land itself. Mysterious Person proclaimed that everyone should heed his words as the Ice Age apocalypse was about to begin.